What is up? I'm Jared Welch. He's Aaron Halterman. It is officially Kentucky Derby week. This is Blinkers Off. What's up, guys? What's up, Halterman?
What's up?
We're here.
We're here, man. We
finally made it to the week.
I'm anxious. I'm more anxious this year than I've ever been, to be completely honest. I can't sit here and say I'm more excited because I was so excited for American Pharoah and Justify. Like, I was jumping out of my skin. I just knew they were going to win. This one, I'm anxious. I'm super jacked, but I don't have like that strong confidence, but I do have confidence that who I'm going to bet is going to pay more than they probably should. And so it's a little bit of nervous energy this year instead of that whole, well, we got this type of feeling. So I'm very excited to have our guest on today. Maybe help me determine between these two horses that I'm trying to pick as we see.
Yeah, I was going to say, I haven't made my final pick because that's why, I tell people, they're asking me, I'm like, well, we interviewed Jon on Tuesday. So then I'll let you know who I end up on. So no, it's obviously it's a we have to, you can't have the Kentucky Derby without interviewing Jon. But yeah, I texted you guys yesterday. I was just like, I can't remember a year at least. Yeah. I mean, I agree with the Pharoah stuff and Justify, but like, it just, I think maybe it is because the horses I like are such good value. And that it's just, I'm nervous. Like I had got this kind of lump in my stomach, I'm excited. And, in the last couple of years of course you had, 2020, which was a mess. And then 2021, which was different in the sense, not many people were there still. And then it just feels like we're kind of back to normal and a field that you have favorites that maybe shouldn't be that low price. You're going to try to beat them. And it seems like a rather good field, not to mention the Oaks is a great race as well. The entire Friday, Saturday. So yeah, I mean, I can't really remember, at least in recent history, where I've been more kind of jacked up in terms of just, I'm ready to get there. I'm ready to start betting. I'm ready to, it's going to be, I'm feeling it. And if you're not feeling it, I don't know, something's wrong with you.
No, follow a different sport, I guess, right? If you're not feeling it right now. No, I agree. Like I said, it's this nervous energy. I'm hyper, I'm bouncing off the walls right now. I'm ready for this race to be run. The draw, we made so much of it, and it's like, that didn't really help narrow it down too much. They all draw pretty well. So anyway, this is an exciting show every year, and I'm looking extra forward to it this year.
All right, let's not waste any time of us talking, because who cares, right? About what we have to say. Today's show, it's right. It's time. Jon White, the annual Kentucky Derby Jon White interview. Jon White does the morning line, Anita, Del Mar. He, of course, does a Breeders' Cup when it's out there as well. He's been in the game longer than most of you have been alive. He's going to give us thoughts on the 2022 Kentucky Derby, including some of his strongest bets, favorite long shots, all that good stuff. I mean, you don't want to make one single bet until you listen to this podcast right now. Let's go. All right. Let's bring him in. The man, got him on video. Jon, what is up, Jon? How's it going?
Great to be with you guys. It's a tradition like no other. You have the mint juleps, the singing of my old Kentucky home, and now we have my appearance with you dudes. By the way, your whole team, you and your whole team have done a really super job with a lot of information leading up, and you'll continue to do so. But really, I've been watching and listening, and The thing I've really appreciated is when the four of you get on and go back and forth, because it reminds me of my early days in the game. That, for instance, my father, my late father, and myself, and usually a friend of his, or maybe two, we would drive out of town to go to the races, and we would stay at a motel, and we would have our racing forms, and we would handicap, and then that evening, the evening before we would go to the track, we would have a round table very similar to you guys. And I'm telling you, it was educational. It's part of my education for this game all those years, handicapping, listening to other people's perspective and everything. And the back and forth with you guys, that has been really excellent. So I really applaud you guys for that. Wanted to point out a couple of things before we get going. As I showed you guys earlier, up there, right over there, is a little next to that painting, which that painting, by the way, it's a print of a Munnings. You've heard of Munnings. That's a Munnings. And to the side of the Munnings, that's a little plaque with a little slice of a wire. And it's a slice of the actual Churchill Downs finish line wire that went across the track above the finish line. So Secretariat went under that. Seattle Slew affirmed, everybody up to 1994. They discontinued it in 1994. So that was the first year. They took that down. They never put it back. But Churchill was smart. They sold this to people. And my late father, bought one of those and like for a birthday present, presented that to me. So that's there. So very appropriate for the Kentucky Derby. My wife has a Kentucky Derby glass collection that goes clear back into the early 70s. And we have this year's already here on the buffet. So I'm ready to go for the 2020 Kentucky Derby. And Jared, you said, how long I've been in this game. I didn't quite make it for Leonatus in 1883. The last horse to win the Kentucky Derby with only 2 races under his belt. And if Taba does it, he'll be the first horse to ever win the Kentucky Derby with only 2 races under his belt and did not run as a 2-year-old. And just as a little background on that's kind of interesting. Leonatus won that race. This was a really good horse. He lost his first career start. He finished second as a 2-year-old, and then he was 10 for 10, all stakes races as a 3-year-old. 10 for 10. Wow. I mean, and in the Kentucky Derby, the horse he beat, the runner-up, was trained by the guy that trained Apollo. You've heard of Apollo. We all know the Apollo curse that Justify broke. Justify became the first Kentucky Derby winner since 1882 who hadn't raced as a 2-year-old. And that trainer of Apollo, if it hadn't been for this Leonatus, would have had back-to-back Kentucky Derby wins. So, and by the way, one other tidbit on Leonatus. It's the tradition to put the roses on a horse in the winner's circle after the race. Well, that putting the roses on the horse didn't start until 13 years after Leonatus. And what happened when Leonatus won it, they had a bouquet of roses to present to the winner. And Leonatus ate the roses. So you've heard of winning the roses, but come on, eating the roses?
That's the last thing I thought you were going to say right there.
We just need to.
It's part of what makes the Kentucky Derby the history. And it's part of what makes racing, quite frankly. Yeah. It's like baseball, the history of baseball or any, but there's such history associated with this sport of thoroughbred racing. And of course, the Kentucky Derby has so much of it. I mean, so it's so rich in history. And as a historian, of course, I just thrive on that. But so you find out these things. And but let's get right to who I like.
Well, it is interesting that you found a way to tie the Taba and Justify in some regards. So let's talk about obviously Taiba, the two California. You're out in California. You know these horses very well. Taiba and Messier, very good value here. And I know you and I, of course, we're Team Taiba. We've been for a while. We've been, we have some ownership in the horse, and we were on Taiba. Messier is another horse. Obviously, you were on before Taiba. Are you back to Messier? Where are you at now? Because the value in this race with these two horses in particular is insane.
Well, let me start by saying that this, and you guys were alluding to this earlier when you first came on, this particular edition of the Run for the Roses is so competitive. We don't have an American Pharoah Secretariat. Now, I will say this. If there's one in this race, who is it? It's Taiba.
Mm-hmm.
He's the only one of these 20 horses that has the potential at this point to be a super horse, to be a superstar. Messier could be a Kentucky Derby winner. Epicenter could be a Kentucky Derby winner. Zandon can be a Kentucky Derby winner. Modonegal can be a. These are all horses that certainly can be. Taiba not only could be a Kentucky Derby winner, he could be a four-footed LeBron James, a four-footed Tom Brady. Really?
Yeah. Because
I'm going to tell you right now, if he pulls this off, it is so mind-boggling to go from a 6-furlong maiden win on March 5th at Santa Anita to the Grade 1 Santa Anita Derby at 9 furlongs, 6 furlongs to 9 furlongs, and then win the Grade 1 historic Kentucky Derby at 10 furlongs in your third career start. I mean, but you know what? He was number one on my top 10 after the Santa Anita Derby. Messier had been number one for 9 straight weeks going into the Santa Anita Derby. And then partly because of this workout situation with Taiba and how good Messier has looked. And Messier, look, he's got more of the traditional, what you're looking for the Kentucky Derby. He does. It's clear. But Taiba could be that super horse. And so when I had to decide, do I stick with Messier, who I moved back into number one last week, or do I flop again and go to Taiba? And it gets very tricky. I can tell you two dudes that I've been making picks in the Express Bet Wagering Guide for like over 20 years. I've never changed any of the four. We have an early deadline that you make picks, and then there's an update. And today was the day you had to submit your picks for the update. I had to submit my picks last week. So my picks last week, I had Messier number 1, Zandon number 2, Taiba number 3, Epicenter number 4. I've never changed my original picks for that wager guide in over 20 years till this year, barring a scratch. Now, obviously, if they're different, I would change.
Yeah.
But I can't. Here's the way I looked at it. If I pick Messier, if I pick Taiba and Messier wins, I can live with that. You know, I picked Taiba. I was hoping maybe it's partly with my heart more than my head. So I could live with that. But if I pick Messier and Taiba wins, I feel crappy because I'm sitting there going, how can I? And when all I had to do is keep going back and watching the stretch run of the Santa Anita Derby.
Yep.
And it isn't like Taiba barely got up. I mean, he motored by. Now, Messier should move up off of that race. He'd been off 2 months, and the way he's trained, I think he will move up. But look at those Thorograph numbers. Taiba gets a -0.5, and the lower the better with the Thorographs. And to me, the Thorographs are better than the Buyers, but the Buyers are good. They're an excellent tool. Listen, I was in racing long before the Buyers. All we had were the daily racing form speed ratings. And those were hardly relevant. And my dad would say, these things aren't worth much. So remember how I said we would sit around in the motel and do our handicapping? My dad would say one of the first things, well, this horse just ran an 89. I go, you've been telling me these numbers don't mean anything, and now you're telling me you like the horse because he got an 89. Well, they don't really mean much, but he got an 89. So, it's who's now. Before I go on, I want Aaron to bring up something I thought was very interesting when I was watching yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
I don't look at the time form, but I have respect for time form. When I was going to the races in France and Ireland and England in 1984 at Newmarket, the Curragh, and Longchamp for the Arc, time form was like gold. You didn't have a racing form. So believe me, I'm a big believer in time form. And so I respect time form. So Aaron, what you said about the time form numbers in this race, I think is one of the most relevant points for this race.
Yeah. So basically, here's the deal. Here's why I love time form. I'll do that. Number one, I really respect Craig Mikhalski, the guy who makes the time form numbers. We follow him on Twitter. He tweets out a lot of great information. And is one number better than the other? It's up for debate. But the one thing I know and trust about him is he's putting in the work to make the numbers. And I can respect that. So I do really like Craig. Anyway, with Messier and Taba, they both have run 124 time form numbers. That's their highest number. That's good enough to win 11 out of the last 18 Kentucky Derbies. Some of the losses were Justify, American Pharoah, great horses. Barbaro was on the list. Really Hall of Fame horses or Triple Crown winning horses. And then when you look at Zandon, he has a number good enough to win 1 out of the last 18. And then you look at Epicenter, he doesn't have a number good enough to win any of the last 18. So for me, John, I looked at that and said, we got a horse that's 3-1. We got a horse that's 7-2. Combined, they've been able to win 1 of the last 18 Kentucky Derbies. And we got an 8-1 and a 12-1 that's been able to win 11 out of the last 18 Kentucky Derbies. That's how I narrowed it down to 2. Just that simple.
And I've pretty much narrowed it down to 2. Although, like I say, I think this Derby goes deep. To me, for me, it's kind of a big 4. Taba, Messier, who I'm picking second. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities for those two to run 1-2 again, honestly, because going in, to me, they are the 2 fastest horses. So why would it be impossible for them to run 1-2 again?
Yep.
Now, what are the chances of that? Probably it won't happen, but I'm saying it is possible. That wouldn't shock me. Zandon, I have 3rd, Epicenter 4th, but beyond that, my next 6 horses on my top 10, all 6 to me have credentials, and they're not that far away on the numbers. There's not this big gap. These horses are pretty well bunched. Whatever numbers you're using, there's not a canyon's worth of distance on these. And then even besides the next 6 for my top 10, there's 3 horses to me that I think aren't impossible to win this race too. So out of the 20, to me, I can make a case for at least 13 of them that is a case that isn't wacky, that they could win the race. So, and this is the type of Derby that I think, could lend itself to an upset. On the other hand, let's look at how recent Kentucky Derbies have been won. In the last 10 years, 7 of the 10 winners were horses that came from California with that California speed. I shouldn't say winners, horses that finished first. But for us bettors, if you're a horse player, who won the 2021 Kentucky Derby? Medina Spirit.
Yep.
That's who cashed. That's what matters to us is, did I cash my ticket or not? And if you bet Medina Spirit, you cash your ticket. If you bet Mandaloun to win, you did not cash your ticket. So for me, we're focusing, and it makes more sense to focus on the horse who did reach the finish line first. So 7 of the last 10 had come from California. And look at the 9, you go back to Orb. In the last 13 years since the point system, 12 years in a row since Orb, we've had horses that were on the pace or just off the pace. And this to me is the problem for horses like Bo Donegal or maybe even Zandon. Now, Zandon's a little bit of a question mark to me because I'm not convinced he's a stone cold come from way backer. He might have a little more speed, and he could maybe sit fairly close. I wouldn't rule that out. He's improving so much again. You look at his numbers, and look at his buyers: 80, 90, 93, 98. I mean, what a beautiful pattern. And the same in the Thoroughgraph. Again, the Thoroughgraph, you want the lower. He goes 6.5, 4.5, 2.25, 1.5. And that 1.5 is important because Taiba has the best number, -0.5. And look, I know that Jared feels this way. Who's the most talented horse in the race? At least that we feel right now. It is Taiba. Look at his speed figures tell you that. What he achieved historically tells us that. So Taiba has a -0.5, and in his debut he got a 2. Messier got a 0.5 when he won by 15 in the Lewis, and a 0.5, 1.5, I should say, a 1.5 and a 1.5. And by the way, Messier's Lewis originally was a 1, and Thoroughgraph rarely adjusts their numbers. Buyers do it more often. That was originally a 1. And the only other one in this whole group that has anything under a 2 is White Barrio, and I'm a little suspicious of his 1 in the Florida Derby. He came home very slow in that race. So, but Thoroughgraph emphasizes a lot of elements why they're better than the Buyers, such as wind even, and how much ground you lost. And, Buyers are more just kind of cut and dry. There's more elements involved in a Thoroughgraph, and that's why their numbers are stronger to me. So, and the thing about a Buyer or a Thoroughgraph or a time form or the Old Bailey Racing Form speed rating, you got to all look at them, with a grain of salt. And when you think they might be a little off, for instance, in the case of Taiba, in his Buyers, he got, in his debut, a 103. And then he got a 101 that was upgraded to a 102. By the way, Aaron, you mentioned Craig Lukowski of Time Form. Mm-hmm. That guy we owe a debt to because he keeps an eye on this timing of these races, which is so important. And here we are in 2022 and putting, rovers on Mars and everything, and we can't time thoroughbred races. I'm just baffled that this is that hard. If you watch the Olympics, they tell you if it's a world record before the swimming event or the running event is over. They're going, hey, it looks like it might be a world record. Hey, it's a world record. Racing, you don't even know if it's a record, if the time's right or whatever. And then we wonder why, we're not regarded as one of the major sports. That's kind of embarrassing, quite frankly. Yep. But Craig is just like a bulldog on that, and has gotten a lot of times corrected. But as far as Taiba, he got the 103 in his debut, then a 102, and I questioned the 102. As I pointed out in my ExpressBet column, there were many Santa Anita Derbies in the last, say, 20 years in which the winner ran a slower time than Taiba, but got a much higher Buyer or a higher Buyer, but some of them much higher. You're going to tell me the track was that radically different or whatever? So I look at, and here again, I wrote that before I knew what his Thoroughgraph was. So I was questioning the 102 right away once I compared it to the history of Buyers in the Santa Anita Derby. And I feel vindicated in my skepticism because of the fact that on the Thoroughgraph, he did improve off his debut. He went from a 2 to a -0.5. And that's not like moving. In Buyers, that would be like maybe 10 points or something, not 2 or whatever. That's a quantum jump or you can't jump backwards. He jumped back. He's getting a lower number. Those lower numbers, I love it when all those Thorograph and Ragazin guys, they love this phrase. He got a new top. Well, if you're graphing it and the lowest is the better, how is that the top? He actually got a new bottom. But they all say, hey, he got a new top. Well, that's incongruous to the way they make their figures. So keep that in mind the next time you hear a guy. They love it. All those sheets guys. He got a new top or that, No, it wasn't. How could a 1 be a new top versus a 4? Right? So
never thought of that.
That's the thing about Taba is, to me, and he's the only horse in the race with more than, a single triple digit buyer. Mm-hmm. The only other one's the 103 by Messier. Now Messier's 103, I think, is better than Taba's 103. Why? Well, because Taba's was in a 6 furlong maiden sprint, and Messier's was in a graded stakes race at a mile and a 16th. So which 103 is more relevant to the Kentucky Derby? Mm-hmm. Certainly Messier's. Mm-hmm. But see, to me, I'm looking at that 102 by Taba and saying that to me is more like maybe a 105, a 106, a 107, quite possibly, based on the history of the Santa Anita Derby buyers. But the point is that Thorograph had Taba improving. Buyers have him regressing a notch. And when you watch the two races, I mean, look, Taba looked impressive in his first race. But that Santa Anita Derby to run, and look at how far those two, now I know there wasn't much in the race, although I know that Jared got Happy Jack in the draft today that you did. So.
Yeah, don't sleep on Happy Jack, guys. Okay, I'm really high on this horse.
He's very excited about Happy Jack.
So, but anyway, these are the things. Now Taba, so he's got the speed figures, and the thing is, now what about the workout? And the only one workout. Here's another thing that people sometimes. We're so focused into all of this stuff, the post position. Now let's look at Epicenter. Epicenter drew post 3. And so people are going, is that good? Is it bad? A lot of people. Well, first of all, and they said it's a good thing he didn't get the 1 or the 2. Well, if the 1 Mo Donegal scratches or the 2 scratches, he'll be in the 1 or the 2. So you're sitting there happy that he got the 3 and he might not even break from the 3. See, my point is these things can change. Now, it's true that Yakteen said that Taba would, I'm going to give him 1 workout between the 2. I want him fresh. I want the tank to be as full as it can. That concerns me a little bit because you also need him, fit enough and everything for that 1.25 miles. When you're worried and you're backing off the training a little bit, that concerns me. The minute I saw that, it worried me a little bit. And the history tells you of the record of horses that have had a race a month before the Kentucky Derby with only 1 workout. It's only 2 horses in the last many years, and neither one ran a jump. But they weren't the same caliber of talent of Taba. So that's a little irrelevant to me too. That those horses only had 1 work. Taba's a little different ball game here. And the thing about Taba is, and Yakteen, he came out in the Santa Anita stable notes over the weekend that Ed Golden writes and made the point. In fact, I wanted to make sure I got this right, that he said that, here it is. I'll play it by ear and see what I want to do in terms of the training for both Taba and Messier. And this was last weekend that he's saying this. And he says it was a perfectly scripted drill for Taba. And the thing about Taba, he isn't that good of a workhorse. Now, he certainly was good enough once to work like 10-1 and have a super gallop out to fetch a bid of $1.7 million. So it isn't like he's never had a good workout, because part of him selling for $1.7 million was his workout. So, but I will admit, I think he is kind of one of those practice. He's not a practice horse. He is a game day horse. I mean, and there are horses like that. I mean, there's been a number of really good horses. I'll give you an example right off the top of my head as I'm talking about this. Buck Passer in the 1960s, he would, in a race, take the lead and really, he'd just put his feet down and like almost prop. He'd almost stop. One of the greatest races, if you go to YouTube, and I urge you to and anyone else seeing this to go to YouTube and look up Buck Passer in the Flamingo Stakes. It's a video that your jaw will drop. I promise you. Because they call it the chicken flamingo, because they took off. It was like a field of 12 or 13 or 14. And they had like win wagering only, because Buck Passer looked like such a cinch. And they were saying, what a chicken racetrack that you don't even offer place or show, and you got 12 or 13 or 14 horses. When you watch the race, Buck Passer comes on and takes the lead, and then I'll tell you, at least 10 horses go by him. Maybe more, but at least 10 in the stretch, and he won. And that's what I mean by a horse that, now I have seen video of them trying to work Buck Passer at Santa Anita when he was a 4-year-old. And he was so difficult to work. If he worked him alone, he wouldn't work like it's practice. I'm not going to work. What are you talking about? It's not game day. So what they had to do, and if he worked with one horse, he was so superior to the horse that he would quickly open up on the horse and shut it down like in a race. So how do you work a horse like that? And what they did was try to set up 2 or 3 other horses around the track stationed as relays. And Buck Passer would start off and he'd pull away from the first guy, and by then he'd be up to the second guy. And so he'd try to catch him, and so on. And the thing, look at this. Well done. So look at how many horses are in that race. And I'm telling you, Buck Passer had the lead at the top of the stretch. You wouldn't want to have a show bet on him. And he comes back on and wins this race. That's him down on the rail in the fifth silks. Look, you don't even think he's going to win.
No way.
Look.
Oh my God!
That's unbelievable.
Okay, I gotta watch it. Go back.
Yeah,
I thought it was the horse on the outside.
I did too.
I'm telling you guys, this is.
Wait, where is he at? Is he on the lead here?
Well, look for the fifth silks, the black with the red cap. You know, the same personal ensign silks, inside information, easy goer.
Yep.
Those are the silks. So, you know, it's so small, it's difficult to see. But look, just from the 16 pull home, you can see what I mean. You wouldn't have wanted to have a win bet on him. Look, you think this horse in front's a cinch. If you had live betting, you'd be broke after this. Because even here, the horse in front looks like he's going to win.
Oh, that's incredible.
Wow.
So
that's crazy.
That's unbelievable.
You know, this is what I mean about Table. You don't want to be too harsh on him when that's kind of his modus operandi. That he's gonna try to catch a horse, which like he did with Messier. You know, and the thing about Taba that's pretty cool to me is how he's got that gun runner way of going. That you're looking at him go, and then he sees a horse and he just puts his head down and finds another gear. I mean, he's like the second coming of gun runner in that respect. So again, that mitigates some of this business with his workouts. But the main point I wanted to make in terms of these workouts is this, and that is Yakteen set this in motion by saying, I'm going to give him one workout. But then last weekend, he says, I'll play it by ear. What's that saying? I'm not locked in here. That's what I'll play it by ear means. And what I mean by that is, he also said that because Taba's work was a day before Messier's, I might breeze him in Kentucky or let him stretch his legs. So he might have 2 workouts before the Kentucky. It's not impossible. And look, guys, back in the day, and I mean way back in the day, horses, unlike today, had what was typically referred to as a blowout, like the day before or 2 days before a race, and even sometimes the day of the race. And in terms of the Kentucky Derby, in 1958, the popular stretch runner, Silky Sullivan, who early in his 3-year-old year came from 41 lengths behind in a 6.5 furlong race at Santa Anita and won. He ran in the Kentucky Derby, but it was a muddy track. He didn't like it. And more than that, he just wasn't like in the same league, truthfully, as Tim Tam from the powerful Calumet Farm. But that morning, he worked 3 furlongs. 8 o'clock in the morning of the Kentucky Derby, Silky Sullivan worked 3 furlongs. Now, when's the last time you saw a horse work 3 furlongs the day of the race? Even the day before the race, even 2 days before the race.
Yeah.
But that could happen with Taba here. He could have a 1/4 mile little work that doesn't even get recorded. So I'm saying sometimes we make mountains out of these things that are really can be molehills. And by the way, that Silky Sullivan race where he came from 6.5 furlongs behind, that was the first time Bill Shoemaker ever rode him. And I talked to Bill Shoemaker, his agent, Harry Silbert. Reggie Cornell, the trainer, had passed before I came to California, so I didn't get a chance to talk to him. But I asked you, I said, what do you remember about that race? And he says, well, I was like a 1/16 of a mile behind the next to last horse. You know, I didn't think I would. I didn't think I could hit the board. And he comes. That's another one that's on tape, by the way, that you can find at YouTube. That's another one. And you know, the guy that took that tape, Joe Burnham, who was at my wedding in 1983 at the Santa Anita Church across from Santa Anita, Joe Burnham, he is the guy that saved a lot of this. He's responsible for that buck passer tape that we just watched. That's from Joe Burnham. And without him, we would have lost a lot of video history of this game, including that Silky Sullivan race. And when you look at the tape of that Silky Sullivan race, you as they're heading to the far turn, there's a horse that you think is last. And you go, how does he win from there? And then Joe pans further back, like a 1/16 of a mile. And here's this horse running, and you're going, this is one of the few times that you know the result of a race, and you're looking and you go, there's no way he can win. You know he wins, and you're going, there's no way. And he wins. And my favorite part of that's in interviewing Shoemaker's agent, Harry Silbert, because I said, what do you remember about that race? And he says, I was sitting in the box seats with the trainer. And he says, we both had our binoculars out and we're watching in the 6.5 furlong chute. And remember, this is Shoemaker's first time he's riding the horse. And they come down out of the chute, and this horse, like I say, he's maybe a furlong behind the leader. He's like 1/8 of a mile last. 41 lengths. And these guys are watching in their binoculars, and the trainer says to the agent, I told the kid not to rush him, but this is ridiculous. Oh gosh, that's one of the best things I've ever had somebody tell me ever. So that's the thing about this Taba situation. So, and then we go to the jockeys.
Yeah.
Who else do you want in this race? Who's won the Derby the most times of anybody riding in this race? Johnny V. Or who's won it the most, second most, twice? Mike Smith. So that's another thing, these two. And that's the thing to me. Like I say, I may pick Taba and Messier wins, and I'll have to just say, well, but to me, it is very much an either or as far as just who I like to win the race, but I have much respect for Zandon. I respect, look, this Epicenter, people use the phrase he checks all the boxes. How he does. He's won at a mile and 360. And I was not on his bandwagon till he rated.
Mm-hmm.
And in that Louisiana, and he did it so nicely that, and that's key. That if he hadn't done that, I wouldn't have him in my 4 if he hadn't done that. And look, I got him at number 4. It wouldn't shock me if he goes favored, and it wouldn't shock me if he wins, certainly at all.
One thing about the numbers I just wanted to touch on before we moved on that I think is interesting, and just to bring home your point, is when you look at that performance from Epicenter, he got a 1, I believe it was a 102 that day in that in that race, and he got a 2.5 Thorograph. Taba got a 102 in the Santana Derby and got a -0.5.
That's right. Well, as I've said, I question the 102. See, to me that, I've talked to you guys a lot that the buyers, to me, it would behoove them to have a plus. You know where I got that concept? Time form. When you look at time form in Europe and they give you ratings for a horse that may have potential off of their rating, they put a plus. And to me, the buyers would be so much more effective for horses that either win, with much in the tank, that you can tell they were far from all out. In other words, what is better, a 90 buyer with a horse that's all out, or a 90 buyer where he's far from all out? That's a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, they would help their buyers if they put a plus by that, or if the horse had an extremely wide trip, put a plus by it. So to me, now I will say the Thorograph, they have little notations, and they will put an H next to it, and that means like he had, something in reserve. So they're trying to do what I've advocated that the buyers do, and you don't see it often, and we don't see it all that often. When you watch all the races we watch on a day in and day out basis, week in, week out, month in, month out, year in, year out, and you guys will learn decade in, decade out, is the fact that, you don't want to overdo that, but it would be helpful for the people. But see, I consider those things advantages. Before we had buyers and numbers, it was more of an advantage to me that I had over people, just in terms of, that they didn't have that kind of edge over me in having the speed figures. Like I was a trip guy originally, and now that I was a trip guy with racing where you didn't have the finest jockeys in the country, to say the least, or the finest horses. And where I grew up, it was a 5/8 oval bull ring. And believe me, when they went into that first turn, I used to sometimes watch the races at the first turn, and the yelling and screaming and the whatever you would hear. I mean, it was a lot of times I'd close my eyes, quite frankly, because that turn on that 5/8 track was actually a half-mile turn, because the track originally was a half-mile that they enlarged, but they kept the turns the same. So you elongated it, but unlike Los Alamitos, when it was strictly a 5/8 track, it had 5/8 turns. Boise, where I was a steward at, where Gary Stevens first kind of really, was on the map, had, not sharp turns. That was a 6 furlong oval. And Pomona was, when I first came to Southern California in the early 1980s, it was a half-mile that they did, like at the track of my hometown. They enlarged but kept the half-mile turn. So, and that's one thing about horses that, to me, even with the Kentucky Derby guys, is a horse that can make a move on the turn is something, we talk about my strike system. One of the keys to that is a horse that's going to be first or second with 1/8 of a mile to go. And Jared, you did, a video on Charge It saying he's the one horse you don't feel will, he is a horse that you feel will not win. And I certainly am of that ilk from the standpoint that there's only been one. My strike system, I developed it in 1999. And then I retroactively checked out how it looked to 1973. But because some of my categories deal with graded stakes, I can't go further back than 1973 because that was the first year of graded stakes. And the way the system works, there's 8 categories. And when you don't qualify in the category, you get a strike. Well, the vast majority of horses, 83% going back to 1973 have had 0 strikes or 1. Now, there have been 7 exceptions since going back to 1973. That's not many, but there have been 7 exceptions to have 2 strikes. 1 horse had more than 2. Mind That Bird. Now you say, are you upset that Mind That Bird won? No. And you say, why? My pick in the race was Pioneer of the Nile. I bet $1,000 to win on Pioneer of the Nile. He was 6-1. He had the lead at the top of the stretch. I was sitting in the HRTV studio next to the trainer's wife of Taba and Messier, Millie Ball.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, "Who is that?" Meaning, Mind That Bird. And I said, I have no idea, because I was watching Pioneer of the Nile. And then we figured out it was Mind That Bird. So I lost $1,000 bet. It would have been $6,000. But you know what? That morning before Millie Ball came on, I was on set with Kurt Hoover. Kurt said, "What are you going to do in the Derby today?" I said, "I'm going to bet $1,000 on Pioneer of the Nile." He says, "You know what you should do instead of that? You know how often we get these weirdo winners that pay big in the Kentucky Derby?" I said, "Yeah." Because at that time, that was the case. We'd had so many favorites lately. You forget how the mindset was at that time. Favorites were like you were the first horse you almost threw out. And it wasn't like Pioneer of the Nile was the favorite. He was 6-1. He said, "You should back wheel Pioneer of the Nile in the exacta instead of the 1,000. Or in addition, cut it in half or whatever." But he didn't even finish his sentence. And I thought, you know what? He's got a point. So I bet $1 exacta. It's the only exacta I bet. And listen, I've been going to the races for over 50 years. I have back wheeled one horse in the exacta one time that day. And it was Pioneer of the Nile. $1 exactas. Well, it paid $1,000 for $1. So I lost the bet to make me $6,000, and I made $10,000. Now you say, well, did you do anything for Kurt since he played a role in that? Well, yes, I did. We went to Vegas, had a great time, lived it up. I paid for his airfare, his hotel, his meals, and everything. So, that's a case of, where sometimes you can lose and still win in this game.
Holy hell! I can only imagine. I don't think I know that story. How most people freaking out, and you're sitting there thinking, this horse is 50-1. Like,
so I'm thinking, well, and I don't have a clue what the exacta is going to pay. So I thought, well, maybe what's it going to pay? A couple of hundreds? No, for a $2 exacta, because that's in the chart. It says $2. It's 2,000 something.
Holy shit.
And I didn't, that's another thing in racing. Now, see how stupid is that? You could bet a $1 exacta, but in the chart it says the $2 payoff. So you would assume that was the lowest you could play. See, there's so many things in this game. And there's one right there. I mean, that's the official chart. It says $2 exacta. I know I bet a $1 exacta, so it was available. We've seen this on television where they'll post $2 payoffs when that's not the minimum.
Right.
So, which is stupid. Who is deciding that? Does that make sense?
It doesn't make any sense. No.
I'll tell you, that brings up another time of sitting with Millie Ball, though, on the HRTV set. One time during a commercial break, she said, "John, can you explain to me why such and such, such and such, such and such?" I said, "Millie, all I can tell you is it doesn't make sense, and that's what you often see in racing. She said, you're right. I mean, so many times these things, that you say, well, hey, why is that? And so, but so those are the horses I like, I like the California horses. Now look, the next 6 horses on my top 10, Crown Pride, who has gotten a lot of chuckles, including on dude videos. And look, I get it. And look, Aaron, it isn't unreasonable to say, Aaron, or anybody, UAE Derby winners are 0 for 16 in the Kentucky Derby. That's not an opinion. That's a fact.
Mm-hmm.
But the key with racing, it's like the speed figures or whatever. There's an art, you have to look below the surface. And I can only cite, and you two will remember this, 2017, my top pick in the Kentucky Derby, who went off at 16-1, was a horse called Thunder Snow.
Mm-hmm.
Now, did he win the Kentucky Derby? He didn't even finish the Kentucky Derby. He came out of the gate, and before you could say Thunder Snow, he was bucking up and down and got pulled up. He looked like he was headed for the rodeo in Texas or something. And you say, and I had 1,000 on him that day. And believe me, I'm going to tell you, considering what Always Dreaming went on to do versus what Thunder Snow went on to do, which Thunder Snow went on to win $16 million. That's a lot more than Always Dreaming. But Thunder Snow, it was a nightmare. There was no dreaming with him. It was a complete nightmare. But the point is, he was good enough as a UAE Derby. So to me, that's like an asterisk to that. I'm not convinced he could, believe me, he was a better horse than Always Dreaming. He was better than him. So that tells me if he doesn't pull that wingding, which, talk about weird things to happen. And that's the thing about the Derby. You have to be careful. Listen, when I was sitting in the press box at Santa Anita in 2001, right after the Santa Anita Derby, and I looked over at Kurt Hoover and I said, well, we just saw a Triple Crown winner. Point given.
Mm-hmm.
He goes to Churchill Downs for the only time in his whole life he didn't run first or second. And he wins I bet him in the Derby, but I unloaded on him in the Preakness because I knew he was way better than and I knew he was better than Monarchos, who he drilled in the Preakness and then drilled in the Belmont. And he won the Belmont by over 12 lengths. And if you take out Secretariat's 31 length win, Point Given's Belmont ranks right up there with anybody, Risen Star, anybody. So, but here's the deal with the Derby. 1974, you had a 23 horse field that turned into a complete rodeo. And you had a horse that should have been a Triple Crown winner probably, that he gets annihilated. And Angel Cordero gives a great ride to Cannonade. And the horse that should have won the Kentucky Derby goes on to win the Preakness and Belmont. And, like I say, should have by 7 lengths. He wins the Kentucky Derby, by Little Current. Little Current wins by 7 lengths. And see, back then, I can tell you a little backstory on that. You go back to that chart and read the comment. In fact, I'll read it for you because I got the chart book here.
Of course you
and
do.
This is really comical because CBS was they had the trouble that Cannonade had. And when you saw the video, and see, this is way before computers and video and everything, but you saw this, you knew Cannonade was a cinch in the Preakness. Cinch. And it says, Little Current, closed strongly following a sluggish beginning. He was 21st early and finished 5th. And believe me, he ran a race that win most derbies, just running fit, because he got annihilated. And but see, you didn't have these trouble lines in the form then, in the past performances. I mean, that's why I say, like, when I grew up, I was a trip handicapper. I had the advantage because it wasn't there at the fingertips of everybody. Now it's even more so with the videos. So, you know, you lose your edges. By the way, I will say this. It's amazing in this game that when I was growing up, you know, and going to the races in the 60s, the percentage of winning favorites was like 32, 33, 31, 34, 70s, 80s, to today. We looked at all the information we have and availability, computers and this and that, and look at how you were able to just call up that Flamingo Stakes while we're sitting here.
Yeah.
I mean, we have all that, and yet, you know what the percentage of what is the public picking the winner anymore now than in the 60s? And how is that possible? If we have all this, it's fascinating to me. That's a fascinating aspect of this. So,
you know, to go back to Tabor real quick, when I was like trying to decide between these two, the big thing to me is a normal horse progression. Their second time stretching out, normally they do what, John? They get better.
That's right. Well, how often do you hear the phrase, it's his third start off a rest, and it's off at a horse's best?
Yep.
And if that's the case, you know, and I'll tell you one of the reasons that kind of cemented it for me to go back to Taba, Gary Young, I've known going back clear into the early 1980s. This guy is so sharp. And look at what he's done for Mr. Zidane here. Mm-hmm. You know, he's got such a good eye for a horse, and he knows this game inside and out. But he's realistic. You know, just because he's involved, it isn't like with Medina's Ferret last year. He didn't say, we're going to win this race and blah, blah, blah. No. He said, I think he's coming up to maybe the best race he's run so far. Mm-hmm. And, you know, he's live. And he's saying about Taba, it's like, why would you go to Messier if Messier was basically no match for him in the Santa Anita Derby? And this is what I mean by he didn't lose by a neck or a half or even a length. I mean, it was like no contest. I mean, this horse basically toyed with Messier. I mean, let's face it. So why, when you watch that, would you go, it's going to be different? Now, it might be different because of the circumstances. Only 2 races under the belt. And if he does, you know, one thing Gary Young has said, and it's true for all of these horses, look at Rock Your World last year. You know, people say how bad he ran, but he had no chance. Mm-mm. You can't get eliminated at the start. Pratt's foot came out of the stirrup. He got bumped so hard. The horse many people predicted would be on the lead, maybe no worse than second. He was like, well, here again, I have the chart. Let's look. Where was Rock Your World early last year?
I'm going to guess 16th.
10th.
10th, okay.
10th early. So he went from 10th and then ended up 17th. But I mean, he's out of the race. You know, now this is good because, you know, and for Forbidden Kingdom, right here, and I've heard you talk about this, Jared. I mean, early on the backstretch, you're wondering if Taba's even going to do much. And even Mike Smith. Mike Smith says he was so relaxed, I had to ask him a little to make sure I had any horse.
Yeah.
And here, even here, you think Messier, because Messier's more experienced and blah, blah, blah.
But he puts that head down.
Here's that. Put that head down, and you shift into another gear. And it's like, now who's going to win that day at 1.25 miles?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
And listen, I think the world of Messier, and I won't be, especially if Taba doesn't win, I think Messier's got a great shot to win this race. He's by Empire Maker, who was my pick in the race, and Empire Maker should have won the Kentucky Derby. But he ran, Bobby Frankel sent him to the Wood Memorial. He ran on a muddy track, and he came out of it with a foot problem. And I can tell you at the 2006 Breeders' Cup press party, I had the longest conversation I've ever had with Bobby Frankel. And I knew him well enough because I'd known him from 1981. And I said, you know, you cost yourself a Triple Crown. What do you mean? And I said, why did you send Empire Maker, who you felt was your Kentucky Derby winner from like the minute you got him, even before you got him? They were so high on him at the farm. I said, why did you send him from California where the weather's nice and not run in the Santa Anita Derby and go to the Wood Memorial and run on a lousy, muddy track that he came out with a foot problem? I said, how was your training with him up to the Kentucky Derby? Well, I couldn't train him like I wanted to. I said, there you go.
Yep.
I said, and what happened in the Belmont? Oh, we drilled that Funny Side. See? I mean, he was a better horse. He beat Funny Side in the Wood, and he beat him in the Belmont. And Funny Side, the 10 Most Wanted scared me in the Belmont because this was a case. I had a huge bet on Empire Maker. I got so many horses that I've lost bets on in the Kentucky Derby that go on to do great. Point Given, Looking at Lucky, you know, and Empire Maker's another one. You know, but midway down the stretch in the Belmont, I was worried that I'd win the battle and lose the war because Funny Side was going backwards. But here looming was 10 Most Wanted, trained by Wally DeLossie, very good friend of mine, wonderful man, very sad, had Alzheimer's at the end of his life. But Empire Maker got the job done. And so, I mean, there's so much to like about Messier. I mean, you know, and these horses drew well. You know, I was sitting on pins and needles on that. But again, sometimes too much can be made of that. Once again, I was sitting on the HRTV set with Millie Ball 10 years ago. And we watched the Kentucky Derby draw. And I'll Have Another is I got a future book bet on him. I'm going to bet him in the race. And they say, I'll Have Another 19. And I will say, what I said was expletive deleted. And I mean, I thought, you got to be kidding. What is this post? And then I looked, and no horse had ever won from post 19. Nobody. So I thought, well, there goes another one for me.
Mm-hmm.
On my drive home, I thought, you know what? I'm not changing my pick. I'm still going to bet him because if he's the horse I think he is, that won't get him beat. In other words, if he gets beat, it's because he's not the horse I think he is. It isn't post 19. And listen, I know much was made of Bodemeister in the Pacey set, which was a terrific performance by Bodemeister. You know, Andy Beyer went bananas. And it was. It was such a fast pace, and for him to almost win, I'll Have Another, according to Trackus, another tool we have today, ran about 5.5 lengths farther than Bodemeister, which is why I made the biggest bet on a horse in my life in the Preakness. To this day, on I'll Have Another in the Preakness, and he wasn't favored, Bodemeister was. And I can only tell you that when I got off my HRTV shift at Santa Anita in the studio, I went directly to cash my bet, huge, on I'll Have Another. And it's the only time a mutual clerk has asked me, do you want your bundle of hundreds in a whole food sack? And I said, yes, please. And so he stuffed all these bundles of hundreds into the whole food sack. So that was I'll Have Another. But see, it paid to stay the course that time. You know, and maybe I should not change my mind on Messier to go to Teba. But you got to go with your gut. And like I say, between the two options, I can live with myself more if Messier wins and I pick Teba. If I pick Messier and Teba wins, and he's 3 for 3 and makes history like this. And I mean, and a part of it's I'm pulling for him, because how great would that be? You know, yes, this is an interesting Derby for us. This is another thing that will branch racing out into the mainstream. That this story of this horse and this magnificent achievement, if he were to do it, to do what he's done so historically, you know, it just, I can't not pick him under those circumstances. And listen, is there a worse thing for us gamblers to say we think he's the fastest horse in the race and he's not the favorite and not the second favorite? Maybe not the third favorite. On the morning line, he's not even the third favorite. So how often, that's the type of opportunities that you need to take advantage of, because they don't come along every day. You can go to the races and bet the races all year, and you're not going to see too many instances where you say, this, I'm fairly certain is the fastest horse in this race, and he's not the favorite, he's not the second favorite, maybe not even the third favorite. So from that standpoint, he's kind of a better bet than Messier, because I look at Messier as a solid horse for the race, but I don't consider him the most talented going in.
What do you, onto that note, I'm curious to know, because you're obviously, I mean, people, they may not know, we know, I mean, you do the morning line, of course, for Santa Anita, Del Mar, Breeders' Cup. And what people need to know, like, you, not only do you do the morning line, you don't just sit it and forget it. You watch these races, you see how they're bet, because you get better. You want to understand. So to that point, there's a lot of talk of the 12-1 and the 8-1 on Messier, and kind of maybe people thought it'd be flip-flopped, and maybe it is at post time. So do you have an indication of what, it's like, of course, with horse racing, we're not going to, I wish unless you're betting overseas, you can't lock in the price. So what are we going to get, you think, say, post-time on Teva and Messier?
Well, Mike Battaglia has been making the morning line for the Kentucky Derby since 1974, which was that Little Current road race Cannonade won with just a masterpiece ride by Cordero. So, I mean, going clear back to Cannonade in 74. And look, I envy Mike in this task for this race. This was, to me, because you had the question of which of those two to be favored, and then even those bubbling under, the pecking order of those horses, how low to make them. I would say, and it's easy for people at times to be, sit on the couch and say, I would do this, I would do that. But when you have to crunch the numbers and balance the race for percentages, it's a whole different ballgame. I probably wouldn't have gone as low as 3-1 for the favorite because of what I said in terms of, I don't think there's separation at the top of this race. It's a fairly compact group for the numbers, and numbers drive the betting a lot. You can get a pretty good clue on betting by the numbers, and I'll look for any clue I can possibly get in terms of trying to forecast the odds as accurately as I can. And I listen to people as much as I can. Fortunately for Mike, he was able to make this morning line, issue it after the post position draw. For the last two Breeders' Cups, I've had to submit the morning line before you even know the post positions. So imagine that. And one of the only favorites I missed was in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, which I would have had right after the draw, because I would have flip-flopped the first and second favorites for sure. So that cost me one. I had most of the favorites anyway, but that hurt me by that post position draw. So, and there is no race in America that's more important in terms of post position than the Kentucky Derby. And I heard it said that Mike was considering, for instance, raising Modonegal from 10, and he decided to just let it go. And there's a case where his first instinct was probably his best instinct, because he probably should have raised him, and right off the bat he could have lowered Teba using those points right there. So, and here's another thing I've learned through the years on morning lines. Perception is important. And what I mean by that is single digits or double digits. Teba's up there in double digits. So if he gets action, even down to 8, 7, 9 even, it looks like he's getting more action. when you look at it than if you have him 8 and he's 6 or 5. In other words, that double digit, single digit. So I try to be very aware of that. Another one for me, we don't make 7-to-1s in the United States. So you have a gap from 6 to 8. And making the line at Santa Anita and Del Mar, I have to try my guts out and still balance the race to not have a horse that I think may get bet at 8. Because what will happen, these guys come on the radio shows on the weekend, and you can't imagine how many horses that are 8 will get play. You know, I love this horse today, he's 8. And if I have him 6, you know, that's not perceived to be as big a deal. Mm-hmm. And you won't hear them pick as many of those, you know, or make a big deal out of it. So there's all these elements. I mean, there's so many. I could spend, you know, like 24 hours with you guys just discussing philosophy and approach and things I've learned about morning lines. I can only say it's a very difficult job, one that everybody thinks, not everybody, but most everybody thinks they could do. And I say, well, then sit down and try it and see how it shakes out, because it's not as easy as it looks, like most things, until you do it. And I don't envy Battaglia in the job he was asked to have to do for this Kentucky Derby, just to have the right favorite. I mean, you know, I will say I felt Epicenter was going to be the favorite all the way, but I think Epicenter drew a little better, so that could maybe push you that way. You know, Marty McGee's been one of the biggest morning line knockers. When he comes on the radio, he just loves to, well, this horse isn't going to be 8-to-1. I mean, he's one of the all-timers. And that's why he thinks, you know, he's a tremendous line maker. And I will tell you, he is a very good line maker. But I'll disagree with a lot of his lines. You know, and he's felt Sandon was going to be the favorite for the last 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. Now, will he be right? Maybe. But you know, I think this could go either way. You know, it's very hard to handicap a race to, as far as trying to bet it or, you know, get the winner. But it's also difficult to try to handicap the betting, because listen to how you guys talk after the draw and the different opinions just between you guys. But that's just you. Then I've got to factor in everybody else. And look at how big this pool is. And then you have to factor in Mattress Mac. Now, if he bets 2 million or 3 million on Epicenter, for instance, do you think he'll go favored? I mean, it certainly increases the chances. But maybe now that Sandon's the morning line favorite, he'll go that. But that's a wild card that's just happened in the last couple of years right there. And, you know, I got criticized for making a Japanese horse 15-to-1 in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, in which the morning line favorite at 9-to-5, Jack Christopher, ended up scratching. So that affected that whole, you know, that unraveled my whole line. By the way, the morning line, the name of it's Morning Line. You know why? Because when it first started, it was made the morning of the races. Mike Battaglia just issued the Kentucky Derby morning line on Monday. For the Breeders' Cup, I have to issue them for both days on Monday. That's not the morning line, it's an advance line. Why do you say that's important? Because the morning of the race, you have the late scratches, you know the weather, you know if there's been a track bias, you know if there's a hot jockey. I mean, there's more things that you would be able to make a better line. I would be able to get workout information. I would be able to have thoroughgraph numbers that I don't have now, that I only had for a couple of years before they maybe put the odds in the racing form. So, you know, I think Taba will probably go lower, but I'm not sure, because there's such a concern about him with the workout and his lack of experience. You know, how do you weigh that? You know, the Japanese horse, he's 20 on the line. He could go lower. You know, he might be a wise guy horse, what we call a wise guy horse. That, you know, he's Mike Welsh. I really respect. That guy's got his keen eye for a horse and workouts of anybody I've ever seen, and that's saying a lot. He's raved about simplification and the way he is trained in Florida, and he is raved about Crown Pride. And That means a lot to me. The fact that that guy thinks that much of how he has looked, because he knows it's like Gary Young. You know, and getting back to Taba, that's the thing about Gary Young is he's basically said if he breaks clean, he should be ahead of like 16 or 17 horses going into the first turn. And at that point, that, you know, inexperience goes down the drain. It doesn't matter then. He's sitting to where, again, it's back to what I said about I'll have another. Either he's the horse or he's not. Either he's as good, he's that fast, he's that better, or he's not. And we'll find out. If he doesn't break clean, the whole thing goes down the tubes anyway. But that, like I say, can be the case for anybody. So, you know, people talk about the post position. The break is a million times more important than the post position draw. What happens at that break? And you know who told me that more than once? Bob Baffert. With Justify, American Pharaoh, right down the line. To him, that break, and look, there's a reason he feels that way. He was a very successful quarter horse trainer before he switched over to the thoroughbreds. How important is the break in quarter horse racing?
Yep.
I mean, it's critical. Well, it's pretty critical. It's not a 350-yard race, the Kentucky Derby, but it's pretty darn critical too, mainly because of the size of the field.
All right, John, last question. Now, I know we've talked about Taba and Messier, and we know how you feel about them, and we know how you feel about some of these, I won't call them shorter prices because we both like horses that are larger prices, but you mentioned a few. Give us one horse. Give the people one horse or two horses or some ones you're like that could really blow things up. You know, that's what people are going to watch this, and they're going to say, well, we picked, these are horses I already knew about. Give me a horse that is maybe someone that Jon White would normally pick.
I've got three.
Ooh.
Okay.
First,
write them down, folks.
And believe me, nobody likes this horse. I was listening to the Churchill Downs weekly radio show Friday, and they talked about every horse just about, and got toward the end, and they said, well, we should mention so-and-so because that way we'll have mentioned all of them. They hadn't mentioned this horse. They never mentioned this horse. That's Tawny Port. Now, why do I say he's a possible knockout horse? He's definitely live to hit the board, but he's even a possibility to pull a shocker. Why? He has the look of being the charismatic of 2022. And why do I say that? Because charismatic didn't do all that much in California. And then he went back to the Lexington and got a 108 buyer. And it was like they flipped a switch. His form dramatically changed. And the 108 put him in the mix for the Kentucky Derby. And he was my pick, and he won at 31-1. And I came back on him stronger in the Preakness because, and he wasn't the favorite. There's another one that I bet in the Preakness, like I'll have another that won the Derby wasn't even the favorite in the Preakness. I liked him even better because the 108 that he got in the Kentucky Derby proved the 108 in the Lexington was not a fluke. So he had 108, 108. And again, he wasn't favored in the Preakness. So why do you say, what's that got to do with Tawny Point? Well, Tawny Point wasn't doing all that much. And then he won the Lexington on the dirt. And he visually looked good to me doing it. And the thing about Tawny Point is, if you look at his buyers, you know, he actually dropped from the Jeff Ruby to the Lexington. And he got in the high 80s for the Lexington. Here's Thorograph again. He got a 7 in the Jeff Ruby on the Thorograph and a 2 3/4 in the Lexington. Now, what are Epicenter's two last numbers?
2.5.
2.5, 2.5. So that race tells me, and especially if you then take it a step further, Taba, it's too much is asked of him. You know, Messier doesn't pan out. And Epicenter, we're already saying this horse ran almost as fast. So then you have Zandon. and so that number puts him to where it's realistically, to me, he's not without a shot. Are you saying he's probably going to win? No, not even close. Is he a live huge look, he's 30-1 on the line. I'll bet Mike, for some reason this year, did not make any 50s, which that's another thing with the Breeders' Cup. The Breeders' Cup tells me they do not allow 50s in the Breeders' Cup. So Mike, either he was told that or decided that himself, and Mike's never been shy to make 50-1s, but we know Tawny would have been one of the 50-1s, for sure. Happy Jack would have been a 50-1. So now that's one horse. Another one, and this one got drafted by Jared today because he drafted so well, and that's Classic Causeway. Now, a lot of people have laughed at Classic Causeway, and with good reason. I get it. Look, he went into the Florida Derby. He didn't even really make it to the far turn, threw in the towel, got beat a mile. But I know he's a better horse than that. And it's the thing that you say, did something go wrong? Did he bleed internally? Did he have a breathing problem? Well, now it's coming to light. They feel he had a breathing problem. Listen, Ali Sheba had a minor throat operation after getting disqualified from his win in the Bluegrass into the Derby, and it changed his whole form around. Look at the difference in Ali Sheba before the Kentucky Derby and after the Kentucky Derby once he got the minor throat operation. Now, Classic Causeway, no operation, but they're adjusting his equipment. He's going to run in a tongue tie for the first time, and they're also making another equipment adjustment on him. So, and I think he could be the war emblem of 2022. And you say, well, why do you say that? The way that horse can break from the gate and the speed he has, let's say he gets the jump and he goes to the front. Now, I'm not sure he would even beat Messier to the front, or that he could. So let's say he goes right to the front. There's so many people laughing at him now, and he's going to be such a long shot. I mean, they're not taking him seriously, which is fine for them, because the same thing happened with War Emblem. War Emblem went along, went the 3/4 and 111 and change. And by the way, Mike of your dudes said there's the possibility of a 111 and change 3/4 for this pace.
Mm-hmm.
That could be Classic Causeway. And by the time, what happened with War Emblem, by the time they said, you know what, we better go after him. Do you know how much gas he had in the tank because he went the first 3/4 and 111 and change? He drew off and won by 4 with Espinoza. Will this happen? Probably not. Almost certainly not. But I'm just telling you, if you took the Florida Derby off, his form suddenly looks a lot better, doesn't it? And that's another lesson that I learned. For instance, in 1973, Secretariat finished 3rd 2 weeks before the Kentucky Derby. 3rd, behind Angle Light and Sham. People forget, Sham beat Secretariat. That was another one. Do I stick with Secretariat, who I had predicted in March would win the Triple Crown, which hadn't been achieved in 25 years? Or do I switch to Sham? I stayed with Secretariat, and look what happened. And I didn't, to me, the word is he had a big abscess. But see, we don't know these reasons a lot of time. Why did the horse run such a bad race? And sometimes the worse, the better, because it couldn't have taken much out of him. He didn't run hard enough. He didn't run far enough or hard enough for the race. It wasn't a taxing race, I don't think. So that helps him, actually coming into this. I've won some handicapping contests at Santa Anita, picking horses off horrible races. And the people would come up to me afterwards and say, how can you possibly like that horse? I'd say, because the guy didn't even ride him down the stretch. He was already out of the race. It took nothing out of him. And if you throw that race out, now look at his form. So his odds are so inflated because of the running such a stinker that, and he's a pretty good horse. And I'm going to tell you another pretty good horse who's gotten a lot of chuckles, including on Dude's videos, is Tiz the Bomb, who actually was the last horse taken out of 20 in the dude's draft today. But I'm going to tell you the thing about Tiz the Bomb. Tiz the Bomb ran the bad race in the Holy Bull. So look, I get it. You know, I bet him in the Holy Bull. You think anybody's disappointed? I was disappointed. He'd been out working Smile Happy. And by the way, there's another horse I haven't even talked about. He's another one that could win this race. What's he done wrong? He's lost to Epicenter and Zandon. And he beat Zandon when he lost at Epicenter. I'm not a Smile Happy fan. He's not in my top 10. But if he won this race, he could win this race. Especially, you guys talk about this a lot, and I kind of identify with this. I like McPeak more when he's a price.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when McPeak's like 8-5, I'm kind of nervous. I'm like washing out. But when he's a price, and see, you learn these little things, and they work a lot in racing. So in other words, I like Smile Happy better now than I did earlier in the year when he was the favorite. He was the early Kentucky Derby favorite.
Yep.
So it wouldn't shock me if he won. But look, this Tiz the Bomb, first of all, he's got class. Go back and watch that Breeders' Cup Juvenile. You know, everybody loved the winner who ran a great race from Europe. This horse closed every bit as strongly to run second in that race. Is he better on turf and or synthetic? Almost certainly. But I'm going to tell you, one bad dirt race, again, inflates the price. He broke his maiden by over 14 lengths. Look, it was a low number, but he was a 2-year-old. Did he beat anything? No. But the way he's trained on the dirt throughout his career, what you have here is a horse that's got class, ability, that is back in form. You know, he ran that race in that last time out in the Jeff Ruby. He quickened like you like to see on the turf. But this horse has, again, shown in his training on the dirt that he can run well on dirt. Now, will he win this race? You know, most likely not. But people laughed at Mind That Bird. They've laughed at a lot of horses in this race through the years. Giacomo, you know, I almost beat Giacomo because of my strike system. My top pick was Closing Argument. It's 71-1. My top pick went off at 71-1. Why? He fit in that 8th pole category and I figured he could be first or second at 8th pole. He had the lead at the 8th pole and led the whole last furlong till Giacomo. And that's Mike Smith. If it's like almost any other jockey besides a great jockey like Mike Smith, if he just gets stopped slightly once in that big field, I win with a 71-1 at the Kentucky Derby. But no, Mike Smith gives a great ride and somehow comes from the clouds and gets up and wins by a half a length. I came within a half a length of winning the Kentucky. And it's still one of the most proud picks I've ever made. Why? Because Closing Argument paid $70 to place. It's the record. It's the highest place payoff. A lot of winners don't pay $70. That horse paid $70 to place. And of course, I only bet him to win.
Well, hey, not to like make it worse for you, Halterman, because I know how much you want to talk shit on Tiz the Bomb, but it's possible we're going to be looking at a somewhat of a wet, sloppy. Who knows? I mean, it's supposed to rain a lot. What if Tiz the Bomb kind of likes the slop being a turf horse?
Well, that to me, see, that's another wrinkle. I will say this. I think if you got a wet track, it would play into my top 2 picks because of their tactical speed.
Because they don't have to mess with that stuff.
See, we don't have, like, again, when I was young, which I hate to use that phrase, but we had like heavy tracks and slow tracks. They didn't seal tracks. So tracks would get deep and boggy. Nowadays, and as Churchill, believe me, that track, it gets wet, but it's firm. And those horses skip over it. And it plays into the hands of a Messier or a Taba, maybe even a Classic Causeway. See, there again, let's say you've got a sloppy track. I'm going to tell you, right there increases, the chances, remote as they are, which they are remote. Look, I'm saying Classic Causeway is unlikely to win this race. But I'm also saying this is a Kentucky Derby deeper than I've seen in a long time, to where you can go down the list. Look I haven't even mentioned Siren. And I'm going to tell you, he's not chopped liver. He's improved. He was a head case. He's got a tremendous trainer. He's improving. He's maturing. This horse could fire a big race in this thing. We spent all this time, and his name hasn't even come up. And he is. Can I throw him out? No, in no way can I throw him out. Now I throw out Charge It, and even though he got drafted first in the dude's draft, Summer Is Tomorrow I throw out. Happy Jack I throw out.
Come on, John.
Also, went pretty high in the draft.
Barber Road.
He's not going to be first. I don't throw him out as a horse to hit the board. He fits the profile of a lot of big price horses that get a piece, but he doesn't fit the profile to win. He would be the exception, like a Giacomo, like a Grindstone, those horses like Animal Kingdom. Those are the only three, going back a long ways, that were not 1-2 at the 8th hole. And that's the thing about the stretch closers. Even horses like Orb, you want a horse that can make that move on the turn to be first or second at the 8th hole. Even if they're, that's a Mo Donegal. To me, Mo Donegal's got to be able to somehow generate that rally to get him. And that worries me with him, because it took him till late in that wood to run down early voting. There's another race. If you stopped it at the 16th hole and said, okay, who do you want to bet to win? I'm not betting Mo Donegal. I would have emptied out on early voting. He looked like an absolute cinch. So I give credit to Mo Donegal to run down early voting, who's a pretty darn good horse like that. But trying to do that at Churchill in the Kentucky Derby, and of course he's got more chance to run into traffic. So, but he's a good horse. I mean, he's another horse that, would it surprise me if he wins? A little bit, just because of his style. But he's a pretty darn good horse. Look, I've been successfully taking a stand against the Remsen for many years. And that didn't work this year. Those two horses out of the Remsen, Mo Donegal and Zandon, they're the real deal. I will say this. I have $20 on Zandon at 56-1 from the first Kentucky Derby future pool. So if Zandon wins, it won't break my heart at 56-1. How often, guys, do you get a horse at 56-1 odds that ends up being the morning line favorite in the race?
Never.
And I have that right there with Zandon. How did it happen? I had it on good authority that from the Chad Brown barn, they thought this horse was better than Jack Christopher. And all he had done to that point was win a maiden sprint. So, getting that knowledge is why, unfortunately, I only bet 20. Now you look back and say, why didn't I put 100 on him like Justify when I got him at 100-1? But, still 20-1 and 56-1 is good, pretty good. So I'll take that, especially for a horse coming into this race as good as he is. I mean, he certainly won't surprise anybody if he wins. That's, to say the least.
Horse bettors, it's never enough when, whenever you get it right and whenever you got it wrong, you wish you would have bet less. That's usually how it goes.
Ain't that the truth?
Yep.
All right, John, thank you so much for joining us. And I mean, hopefully everyone listening to this got some insight there, because I know Halterman's brain is just, I saw it spinning whenever you first made your announcement of who you switched your pick.
Listen, I'm on Taba now. He's convinced me.
There we go.
Well, it almost makes too much sense, which is weird to say that, but it's true. I mean,
he's right.
You just start with looking at back-to-back triple-digit buyers. I mean, if we were just handicapping this race and it's the fourth race, at Oaklawn on a Friday, you'd look at these buyers and you'd go, who do you want? And you'd say, man, I'm taking this horse, right? And they'd say, well, he's not the favorite. And you'd go, what? Well, he's got to be the second. No, he's not the second favorite. I mean, it almost looks, and the thing is, it isn't like we're going in as supporters of him saying we'll be absolutely floored if he gets beat, but going in, I feel pretty comfortable with him. Again, that break, and if he breaks and he is ahead of 16 or 17 horses going into the clubhouse turn, I'm going to tell you what's going to pop into my head right then is that replay from the Santa Anita Derby down the lane of him in that last, even more than the furlong, last 16, what he did there. And the possibility that, because again, if he's ahead of 16 or 17, he's got a great chance to be first or second at the 8th hole. Mm-hmm. And if he's first, and look, what did you say, Aaron? I mean, it's not a point to be taken lightly. That what happens with a horse like in this scenario with his second route? I mean, in other words, he actually has a right not to go backwards, but to go forwards.
Yep.
He does. Now, he also could go backwards. Maybe his gas tank won't be full and, he'll pay the price. But I got today's, and again, what I told you guys about Mike Welsh, I got today's Mike Welsh workout report, and what he said about him this morning, how happy he looked, and right here.
I can't believe this horse.
Taiba made a very favorite. Now listen, he talked about both Messier and Taiba, and he says they were both out for routine gallops. But did he say anything further about Messier? No. Crickets. He says Taiba made a very favorable impression, looking quite happy with ears pricked coming by the wire and continuing into and around the clubhouse turn. I mean, does that sound like a horse I don't want to pick or bet on in the Kentucky Derby? No. I mean, it's almost like trying to find reasons not to bet him. And there are, it's obvious, it's the lack of experience. But, Justify helps that. What we saw from him, and he didn't just win the Derby. Now, a difference here too is I think Taiba is facing better competition than Justify. I'll tell you this, if Taiba was in against that bunch in this Derby, I would love him then. Good Magic was a good horse, but that rest of that crew, that helped Justify, and that to win that Triple Crown, that wasn't your Curlin, Street Sense, hard spun, rags to riches crew. This crew looks pretty good, really, overall on quality. I mean, that's what's making it a challenging race for us to try to figure it out. And so that's a little bit against Taiba too. Is he's facing not only the history, but a better group than Justify. But Justify shows you what can be done. Who laid the foundation on Justify? Bob Baffert. Who laid the foundation on Taiba? The foundation, because it's that foundation that people are worried is lacking. But this horse worked a million times last year. Mike Smith even worked him and liked him last year as a 2-year-old. I mean, it wasn't like this horse just came on the scene this year. So yes, he didn't run it to, but again, you have to dig below the surface. This horse had something like 16 workouts or something as a 2-year-old. So yeah, he didn't have a race, but how many 2-year-olds that didn't race have 16 workouts? So, I think you're making the right. I mean, the thing is, Aaron, between these two, like I say, it's just better to sink or swim with the horse that he is the more exciting horse going into the race. And he's the fastest on numbers. So why in the heck not going? And Jared had this gut feeling even before I've come around. You were on this right away. And you were even not concerned about the workout at all at first, but then you started to be a little more concerned about that. But like I say, you don't want to overdo these things. We know so much more information about the Kentucky Derby that it can get us off track of what we really need to focus on. What we really need to focus on is who are the best horses, who has the style to win, who has the breeding to win, who has the rider to win, who has the trainer to win. These are the things. And when they say checking boxes, which box there didn't Taba check?
Yep.
I mean, he checked all those. So
I just got to the point where I was, because you're right, I was, but then I started to wonder, but then like you say, it's like I'm not gonna whenever they hit that first turn and Taba's sitting in third and he's in like the perfect position, I'm gonna say, are you kidding me? I didn't bet this horse. Because after that, it's all out the window. And like you said it perfectly. It's like, we're going to find out if he is who we think he is. But I think wouldn't you rather have that whole, that position and just at least know if I'm exactly like you. I would feel so much better picking him. And it's like, okay, experience got him, or he missed the break or whatever. Like there's it's 100 things that could happen. But then picking Messier, and it's like he hits the top of the stretch, and can you imagine picking Messier and you see Taba run him down? You're like, well, shit, I just saw that a month ago.
That makes me want to throw up.
By the way, this goes back to what you guys have been doing with the four of you when you go back and forth, because you just made me think of something I hadn't thought about before, Jared. And that is, Mike Smith now is more familiar with Taba. See, and he's going to ride him with more confidence than he couldn't ride him with confidence in the Santa Anita Derby. He'd never ridden him. He'd been on him in a workout or two, but it's irrelevant. It's not the same as having just won the Santa Anita Derby. He now has a feel for what this horse can do and so forth, that this one race experience for Mike Smith is invaluable. And it's another plus, actually, than picking him up just for this race. In other words, if Johnny B had ridden him both times and now we're getting Mike Smith, it's not like Mike Smith can't do that or whatever. And he showed that in the Santa Anita Derby. But I like the fact he's now even more familiar with this horse, quite honestly. And he knows what this horse can and maybe can't do and so forth. So he knows how much he can ask him early or not have to ask him or whatever. And I hadn't thought about that till just right now, since you were talking, and it sparked that thought in my mind. And I thought, you know what? That's yet another thing. This is the thing that in the past few days, I keep finding more reasons, not fewer reasons, to like him. And the main one is this. He's not going to be Justify's price. He's not going to be 5-2. I would still pick him at 5-2. I might not bet him at 5-2, but I would still pick him at 5-2. But I'm certainly going to bet him at whatever number he's going to be, whatever it is, because it's not going to be close to 5-2.
Nope.
I mean, it's not.
You're going to get the price you want.
These are the opportunities that you look for. They don't come along very often, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Look at me in Thunder Snow. I got 16-1 on the horse that. I'm telling you, who was the best horse that ran in that Kentucky Derby? It was Thunder Snow.
Not close,
It's not close, but did I get $16,000?
No, he sure didn't.
I got a picture of this horse being pulled up on his sitting there going, my God, it's like, how can this happen? And did he ever do that again? No.
Nope.
Did he ever do that before that? No. He just picked the Kentucky Derby when I had him at 16 to make $16,000. He decided. Now maybe he wouldn't have beaten. I'll say this: Always Dreaming ran well enough. I can't be positive he would have beaten him that day at that stage of their careers. But he was, as it turns out, he was the best horse in the race. So, and that's where I say you have to keep that in mind with the Kentucky Derby. We could also, you can flip that around. That's a way to look at racing a lot of times too. Flip it around. What if we're wrong about Taba, and he's the second or third best horse in the race. But whoever the best horse in the race is, Epicenter or Zandon or Messier or somebody else, but probably one of those three, maybe Modonigal, maybe Crown Pride, as you find out. We win with Taba, and he wasn't even the best horse because whoever the best horse is had trouble or didn't fire or whatever. So, I mean, we even have a little margin for error there with him. I'm pretty satisfied he is the most talented horse. But what if he's not? We could still win because of what happens in the Kentucky Derby. He could be the third most talented or something. We could still, especially with the rider we got, Mike Smith. Because it's the Mike Smiths and the Johnny Velasquez's and Rosario's and Arad Ortiz's, Gaffleone. To me, there's like my starting five. And, those guys are the type of guys that will win more often than other riders when they don't even have the best horse. So that's another thing you have going here with the Taba situation. He doesn't have to be the best horse or most talented to win it. But if he is the most talented, and we're right, it certainly increases his chances to win this race. And as I say, when you look at most races, he's the one most people, it amazes me how often Andy Beyer, who has the most miserable record of trying to pick, and he admits it himself, he's written it in his books. I mean, he's got the most miserable record of trying to pick the winner of Triple Crown races, maybe of anyone in history. And there have been numerous occasions where the horse coming in with the best buyer, he doesn't pick, and he wins, and he goes, well, I just didn't pick him. And I'm going, it's your own numbers. In other words, if he didn't pick Taba, which he wouldn't, because believe me, this lack of experience, there's no way, which that helps Taba too. Yeah. That buyer, and see, I don't necessarily know who he's going to pick. Well, he'll be on a webcast on the DR, but see, his picks don't go in the paper anymore. So
they're so bad they took them out of the paper.
And you guys will love this. And I remember this like it was yesterday. My wife and I were at Disneyland in 2015, the week of the Kentucky Derby. And I said, kept checking my phone to when the form picks would come out. Because I wanted to see, I was praying Beyer wouldn't pick American Pharoah. Praying. And he didn't. And when I saw that, I said to my wife, we were standing in line at the canoe ride. And we were standing in that line for that ride, and I said, the Derby's over. American Pharoah's, he's going to win now because Beyer didn't pick him. And he didn't pick him in the Preakness, and he didn't pick him in the Belmont. So, but that guy's been amazing. And so there's no way he's picking Taba. Messier would be the type of horse he could pick. And actually, that's probably the horse, if I had, he should pick. He's got the best route buyer, the 103, but he could pick him. He could pick Epicenter. I would be shocked if he didn't pick Messier or Epicenter. But see, that helps us with Taba because they carry 126 pounds. Now, they didn't always. That Leonatus, that he carried 105 when he won the Kentucky Derby. But nowadays, we carry 126. And if Andy Beyer picks your horse, you're carrying 126 and Andy Beyer. And listen, that guy, what he did to come up with these numbers, he revolutionized the game. He's a brilliant writer. His books are great all through the years at the Washington Post and in the Racing Forum. I have great respect for the guy, believe me. And as I say, he's the first to admit, the first, not second or third. He's the first one to tell. If you say, Andy, how's your record of picking a winner in a Triple Crown race? He'd say, horrible. And I'd say, you're right.
Yeah. Well, that's thank goodness. Well, I'll be keeping a close eye on, because if he does end up picking Taba, then we're going to have to divert our plan a little bit here.
No way with only 2 races. There's no chance.
All right. Well, I feel
That's the biggest cinch in this year's Kentucky Derby is that guy is not going to pick a horse with only 2 races under his belt. And he even undercut his buyer, in my opinion, in the Santa Anita Derby. So, like, if he'd given him a 105, 106 or something, he might have been more tempted. But he's not going to be tempted when he thinks he regressed in the Santa Anita Derby. And I'm with the Thoroughgraph folks. I don't think he regressed. I think he moved up. And I'm with Aaron Halterman. I think there's the possibility he can move up again. If he does, what are his chances of winning?
90%.
I mean, they're pretty high.
Yeah.
If he does against this crew, like I say, it's a pretty bunched crew that if he moves up, that's separation from the crew.
And what if he just runs the same as he did last time?
But look, if he improves, we're talking about real separation here.
Yeah.
But that's the point you're making, Jared, that's so true. He had separation with Messier last time, who is the horse. Aaron and I are sitting there, and even you, we've all been kind of Messier, Taiba, you know, and it makes sense because Messier, like I say, he's a very logical horse to go to. I can certainly understand anybody going in. It makes sense. Listen, Billy Ball was asked on Mike Willman's radio show Sunday, and I was shocked she answered the question. He said, if you had a $20 bill, would you put it on Messier or Taiba? And she said, Taiba to win would have to be, you know, so brilliant without the foundation. So my $20 would have to go on Messier because he has the foundation. And that's the trainer's wife, who I worked with for years at HRTV, does the TV at Santa Anita. And believe me, she knows she was an exercise writer for Frankel, among others. I mean, she knows her stuff when it comes to horses. And that gave me pause to switch to Taiba. But, you know, that foundation is there on Taiba that people don't fully appreciate with all those workouts. See, that's part of the key here. And did he look like a horse without a foundation in the Santa Anita Derby?
No.
Nope.
Here's another one for you guys. You show the video of that race to somebody that's never, you know, tried to pick the Kentucky Derby winner ever, and you show him that tape and you say, what do you think of that horse? Do you think he's raced a lot? I'll guarantee you most people would look and say, yeah, did he run Greenlane? Did he do anything? I mean, he was a complete pro. And part of it is his mind. I mean, he's got this mind that, you know, and that's a big part of that. You find that on these top horses, like at American Pharoah. The morning after he wins the Triple Crown, they're like petting him at the barn.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not always that way. There's also been very successful. John Henry, I covered him intently for years. And believe me, I didn't come anywhere close to him in his stall or out of his stall. I mean, I might lose an arm being next to John Henry. So, I mean, you know, that just because you're well behaved doesn't mean you're going to be a very successful horse. But that they talk about that mind. And part of it with Taiba is I think it's that competitiveness with him too. You know, he sees a target. He's like that buck passer. He sees that target. He wants to go get that target. They said he was like that, you know, back when he was young on the farm, that he'd be with other horses and they'd be playing and he'd like take off and like purposely run by somebody. You know, that was the case with my favorite horse, Turbulator, when he was young and he was a Zenyatta type, you know, come from behind. He was like that as a you know, very young on the farm. The wife of the trainer would be looking out her window and see the horses playing, and she'd see this one horse like start 5-6 lengths behind like 2-3 other horses, and he'd take off and run right by him. Well, that was him in his career. I mean, that's kind of the case here with Taiba. I mean, we're seeing kind of that same competitiveness from him, you know, that you want to see from a top athlete, and these are equine athletes.
Well, Halterman, you feel now, especially, I mean, I think the final nail in the coffin needs to be the fact that we think that it's possible that Andy Beyer could pick Messier. So I think that needs.
Yeah, that should be the deciding factor, that possibility.
Well, John's picking Taba. Andy Beyer possibly going to pick Messier. Millie Ball's picking Messier. What does she know? She doesn't even know the trainer, right? So, no, listen, I put Messier as the original pick last night, and I did the same thing as John. I went and looked at replays after I was done, and I said, how dumb are you going to feel when this happens again?
I mean, it kind of sums it up, quite frankly. I mean, it really does. And look, sometimes, we've seen horses run second in the Santa Anita Derby and come back and win the Kentucky Derby. I mean, it happened with Baffert a lot. Silver Charm, it happened with Real Quiet. Those two both ran second. I mean,
Medina Spirit.
And Medina Spirit. But, Silver Charm got beat fair and square by Freehouse. They had quite a rivalry the rest of their lives. I mean, it wasn't like Freehouse, he beat him in the Santa Anita Derby. He beat him other times too. But when it was time to run in the Kentucky Derby, it was Silver Charm. I mean, like I say, there's been enough of these. Authentic ran second in the Santa Anita Derby. That was the weird one run in September, which shows you how things can get off track, that we have a Kentucky Derby in September. Who would ever thought we'd live to see that? But
well, hopefully I don't live long enough to see it again. So
exactly.
All right, John, thanks so much for joining us. And this has been, I somehow I don't know how it's possible, but it continues to be better than the last time we did it. So we appreciate you joining us. And hey, I think we can all say, let's get Taba home.
Let's go, Taba.
Go Taba.
Taba. Thanks, John.
Taba.
There you go. How do you feel about that?
Listen, I got to go update the guide. That's how I feel about it. I have, we're rounded into form here with the guide. I got to go update it because the first round of doing the guide last night, I had Messier on top and I felt pretty good about it. And I pulled out my phone before I was going to bed. I'll watch these replays again. And what he said makes total sense. There's no excuse for Messier. Even if we're going to say, hey, well, maybe he wasn't quite ready, which is possible. It was kind of a layoff. Should have finished him off. I'm sorry. And what's the difference? Like they were saying, well, he sat off of Forbidden Kingdom, and that's why. Yeah, but he wasn't right up on him. And he's going to probably get a similar trip to what he got.
Mm-hmm.
If Taba shows up at that same race, Messier can't beat him. I feel great about saying that for sure. Will he show up? Listen. That I can't determine that one way or the other. I can't determine if any of them are going to show up. So,
well, when I did when I went back, we all had a certain horse, and of course I got Taba. When I went back and really analyzed, which is it's hard to do with a horse like that that's so talented. It's like he's only had 2 races, but when you go watch and you really watch the Santa Anita Derby, there was 2 things to me that stuck out. And again, you can go watch this on our YouTube page. Is the first thing was how well Taba broke, and Forbidden Kingdom maybe had issues late in the race, but he certainly was Forbidden Kingdom early in the race. And he was right there. Taba was. For a little bit, he was ahead of Messier. And Mike said, let's let this thing fade. Then you can see Messier kind of come in, Johnny B kind of sneak, and he's like, all right, go. That's fine. That was a key, first of all. Like he possessed that early enough speed to be there. And number 2 was it wasn't like he just I think you could make the case for Messier.
John has something to say. Hold on.
No. On top of what you're saying, that's also good about that, he rated.
Yes.
In other words, he had that speed, but when Mike said, okay, we'll sit, he did. That's not every horse by far. I mean, especially young and only your second race. And I mean, that horse, they talk about push button. That's push button. See, he was so push button that Smith's sitting on the backside and he goes, well, I don't know. And look, we know that's the case. I thought the same thing. And I know you did too, Jared. You're thinking, well, maybe he'll hit the board. I don't know. It didn't look good. It just
no.
And Smith is worried enough that he asked him a little and he got a response enough that he said, okay. And it wasn't like go make a move or anything, but he asked him a little just to make sure, like, is this horse asleep or is he not firing or what the hell? And so then that's the thing about Smith and why, like I say, now he's going to ride him with even more confidence and he didn't do this all late. By the time Messier gets up to Forbidden Kingdom, this guy is on there ready to pounce.
Yep.
So now pick it up. But it wasn't just this. And you're right, because I thought he might go right. He showed so much speed earlier. I thought he might go right to the front.
Right, and
even with Forbidden Kingdom.
Yeah,
he could, and frankly, he could have. I mean, I think he made that decision to say, kind of, okay, I'm not going to try to do that. But you could tell he had that, and I think that's what's going to be so critical about the break. Get in that position, you get to the first turn of the Derby, and all of a sudden, all these issues of the seasoning and things like that kind of go out the window. Where you've got maybe Classic Causeway and Messier or something, and him. And you're like, really? He's got to beat Messier in Classic Causeway?
Yeah.
So, yeah. And the only point I was making was further was like, if he would have, like, if you would have saw this back and forth and he just noses out Messier just as close, you could make the case, say, well, Messier maybe gets him this time. Like, I think that's definitely doable.
That's right.
He cruised by him.
Well, that's like you saw it last night, Aaron. I mean, if you just keep going back and looking at that, it's awfully hard to pick Messier, quite honestly.
Yep.
Now you have to like block that out of your mind practically to do it. I mean, and you have to just take this stand that the experience, lack of experience that you have to take a stand against Taiba in order to get to Messier. You can't do it for Messier over Taiba. You have to go against Taiba to get the Messier.
Yep.
And here's another thing that worries me about Messier, honestly. I mean, you're talking about a horse that, how in the world, I don't care where it's at, under what circumstances, he got beat by Slow Down Andy. Now,
I agree.
I mean, that's on there, that his record. He's not a horse that I'll be honest, I think I can trust Taiba more than Messier in the stretch.
My biggest concern with Messier is when he gets headed, he quits.
See, it's the opposite of Taiba.
Yep, exactly opposite.
Honestly, it's the opposite. So again, if you're going to have to pick between these two, which one of those two profiles do you want? The one that gets headed and quits, or the one that will charge past you and keep going? I mean, it's not. This really isn't too complicated. I mean, the only thing about this Derby is, like I say, I have more respect for these horses below than most Derbies. Most of these, and the strikes point this out. So many horses have 0 or 1 strikes. See, that another reason I wouldn't throw Classic Causeway out. He's only got 1 strike. Tawny Point has 0. I mean, it's another reason I'm on. They're not even in the 2 strike. And it was hard for me to go. This is one thing I didn't mention in the thing. One of the things that made it hard for me to go back to Taiba was the fact he's got 2 strikes, and how much of a lower percentage that is through the history of that. But I've only picked 1 horse since 1999 when I started this with more than 1 strike, and it was a horse called Justify. And guess which 2 categories his 2 strikes were in? The same 2 categories as Taiba. See, so I'm comfortable with, and that it was harder for me to pick Justify with 2 strikes because I'd never done that before. To me, I'm really kind of going against my own research to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt he had the talent, again, what we're talking about, that he was just too talented to not win that thing. And that was proven to be correct. And I think we're in the same situation. That's why would I pick any other horse in this race with 2 strikes or more? No, never. Whoever they are, I mean, I'm sorry. Because even these horses I'm giving you guys as live long shots, they're not 2 strike horses or like Happy Jack's 4.
Jared
So-
likes Happy Jack.
Ethereal Roads for.
He likes him too.
I know he was popular at the draft, those horses.
Yeah, they're going to run big.
But
All right.
I'm saying that this is and part of this is what we've just gone through here between us is, like I say, going back to the days of in the motel we handicap, where, we might have a race where one guy likes a horse and another one likes a different horse, and then a couple of guys like the same horse, and you talk it through, and then it's like, he's right. Why would I not go with that horse? Meaning Taba. He's got the figures, he's got the rider, he's got, just chewing it back and forth. Like I say, Jared, I had not thought about the fact that that's not a minor deal to me. The fact now that Smith is more familiar with him. And I love his post. I mean, this is a great opportunity. This is one of those that just rarely comes along. We're going to get some kind of good number, whatever it is, because it ain't 5-2 or 3. It's not even going to be close. And look, I think it's great that we're all kind of on the same bandwagon here, because we're not like newcomers to this thing to be trying to find. It bolsters me that you both like him, quite honestly. And I'm just more surprised. People want, the reason his morning line might not be too bad is because I'm not hearing a lot of talk about him.
It's weird.
I'm hearing more talk about Crown Pride by far. Think of that. And that's true. There's been more talk about Crown Pride. And part of it is it's not Baffert. That is part of this pie too. If it was Baffert, we didn't have the baggage and he was going there and in the media, that this horse would be getting much more buzz, as you say, or whatever. That's helping the price. Whatever, that's not hurting us. That's helping us. And like I say, you asked me, Aaron, about Yakteen. I've known him, like I say, I was there. I was clocking horses with Whittingham, with Yakteen. Whittingham loved it when I'd stand there clocking. He loved my clocking. And I always had to show first. And Whittingham especially liked my turf clocking, because turf's very tricky to where they hit the poles. And get the right fractions. And the minute, like flawlessly, would be through with her workout. What'd you get, White? What'd you get? So 12 and 5, 12 and 3, whatever. No, yeah. But he loved my clocking. And see, Tim was there for some of that. Rodney Rash was there for some of that. And then to be with Baffert, it's a tremendous, and I've talked about this with Tim. Look at the guys that came up under Lucas. You're kind of ingrained into that training, and it's not bad. I think Fletcher and these guys have done pretty well. But I think it's actually gives you a broader training base to have worked for someone like Whittingham, old school, and someone more new school like Baffert. You're kind of getting the most of both of those to pick and choose what you want to utilize. And Tim has that going for him, because he was with both guys a long time. So, and it's not like he's done that on his own. The worst thing that's hurt him training on his own, quite frankly, guys, but he doesn't get horses like Baffert does or Cox or, he does now. He is now. So we'll see what happens. But I'm not concerned. In other words, I'm more concerned about McPeak.
Yeah, me too.
Honestly, if I'm going to bet a horse in the Kentucky Derby and it's McPeak, that worries me 10 times more than if it's Yakteen.
I wouldn't sleep for a week if he was my pick.
Well, but like I say, he is a better guy to pick at a price. So you guys have owned it, and I felt that way for like over 10 years.
I still wouldn't sleep at night, though, if I had him picked on top.
No, well, look at he started the year. Everybody was smile happy and rattle and roll and this and that. Where are they now?
Yeah.
And who are we looking at? Chad Brown, Steve Asmussen, and Baffert, basically. So there's my 4. Not McPeak, and then you get down to Cox, who certainly, I mean, that guy's proven himself. I mean, with my Knicks Go last year to Central Quality, my 2 Cox horses won me the league, basically.
Yeah.
Yep.
That was the big key, was both of those horses.
Yep.
I couldn't believe I got like a Central Quality with the number 4 pick. That was the shock of me. And then I was able to claim Knicks Go, but I pulled the trigger before anybody could use a December 1st claim on that one. This year, my first round draft is dead, Medina Spirit, which shows you how things can turn around in this game in a hurry.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I have 2 live horses in the Derby and Simplification could hit the board, and I even have Classic Causeway. I mean, he's probably not going to run a jet, but I'm telling you, I've seen these deals before to where that horse, he's like 2 in front heading into the far turn for some reason. And even Tabor and Messier are setting off him or whatever, and everybody's just sitting back. Here's this Classic Causeway just rolling along, singing a song, especially with Leperoux. If he were in that position with him, because that guy's always got something left at the end. He's like Eddie De La Houssaye used to be, or, he's one of those stretch. His style is to come from behind. So if he's in front going into the far turn, believe me, that can be dicey for those, that in itself. Now, I question with Leperoux, and this could help Messier and Taba. That guy's style is not, said. And they might be so worried about Classic Causeway getting a mile and a quarter that they might not quarter horse it with him. That would be so, and plus that could get him more, that could exacerbate your breathing problem if you have one. So in other words, I don't expect a hard send from Classic Causeway. Now he's got the natural speed, but it wouldn't surprise me if Classic Causeway had a clear lead. It wouldn't surprise me if he's vying for the lead, but it wouldn't surprise me if he's off the lead. I think the one that could go to the lead is Messier.
Yeah.
Especially with that rider. He's won back-to-back derbies doing that. And it's sort of like, I got another horse that kind of could work. But here's the key. That just get Taba in that, what we're talking about. Just right off there somewhere. Like he was. Just get him in that same spot as the Santa Anita Derby.
Yep. All it needs to break and get in position, and the red, like you said, from there, it's like I always feel like that with Knicks Go. It's like you can get him in a position, and then after that, it's like he's just going to run his race, and that's how I feel with Taba.
I bet 1,000 on him in the Classic, and believe me, I knew they hit the once. Yeah. Medina didn't go with them. They hit the finish line the first time. I went, well, this is over. I mean, there was no way. Once Medina did not, because that was, and this is what I mean about how tricky it gets with these pace deals. See, people they hone in on this, and everybody got locked into this. They're going to battle. Oh yeah, it doesn't always work that way. That's the thing, that they don't run it on paper. And they have the time form does the pace, and all these guys do the pace. But do you think any of those pace guys had Rock Your World 10th early?
Right.
No.
Pace is, in some respects, harder to predict than the outcome of a race, to me. That's why I don't get too down that rabbit hole. Because the thing about Taba, when we pick him, whether the pace is fast or slow, whether he's on it or just off it, but now obviously if he's way back for whatever reason, then, and listen, he's so talented, I wouldn't even rule that out completely. Like if he was 6th or 7th or something early, or even 10th, I would, if he is a superstar, he could pull, look at Arrogate in the Dubai World Cup. How much would you bet on him 5 jumps out of the gate? Now, the thing about that is it cooked him. I'm convinced that's why, because he drilled Gunrunner that day. Fair and square, more than fair and square, because he spotted Gunrunner a lot. And it's another one of those, he didn't beat him a neck. He ran by him in that race like Taba ran by Messier. But that and traveling to me, and then Baffert kind of ran him back quicker than he wanted in the San Diego. I also don't think Del Mar was his favorite track either. But, his post World Cup record, and I've gotten flack from Baffert many times about how I don't. Just a sec. We got a guy at the door.
Well,
that was perfect.
That was perfect timing. To that point, let's close. What do you say we close this off, huh?
Probably a good idea. Yeah, I gotta get to work. So let's.
Yeah.
Oh, hold on. He's back.
What do you get?
I don't know. Let's see.
Oh, I don't know.
Oh,
What'd you get, John?
John? Okay.
Oh, the California Thoroughbred magazine.
That's what we got interrupted for, dudes.
Well, we decided that the doorbell saved the day there because we got to get work on the guide, and that's what makes this great. Do what?
I got to get to work on the Friday card.
Yeah.
Perfect.
We all have our.
Well, I could definitely say, yeah. Well, I could definitely say, if we were at Matt Denny's, the guide would not get done, and the Friday card might not get done. So thankfully, we aren't for that reason.
That is the truest statement made today so far.
It would be very late at night for all of us.
Yes.
Yeah.
But worth it.
Yeah.
All right, remember, guys, thank you so much for joining us. Go get the wagering guide right now. It's available for pre-sale. It will be available by probably Wednesday night, Thursday at the latest. Of course, all the analysis from the entire team at racingdudes.com. So make sure you go get that. Again, John, thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back sometime, probably like Wednesday or Thursday live. We'll see how that goes. It's going to be, we're travel day Wednesday, Thursday. That's the plan. We'll probably do Thursday. We'll probably do a pod on Thursday for Friday's card, Friday for Saturday's card. But, just all depends on how much open bar we take advantage of on the 2 days.
True. Yes, it's very true.
All right, John, thanks for joining us.
Take care, guys.
I'm Jared Welch. He's Aaron Alterman. He's Jon White. Go Taba!
This has been a presentation of racingdudes.com, your destination for all things horse racing and sports betting. Whether you want free winners, expert insider picks, up-to-the-minute trackside weather reports, or podcasts and videos for bettors of all skill levels, never make another wager without visiting the Racing Dudes. First,